Good morning. How are you?
Remember when a TED Talk actually taught you something? When it felt like your brain leveled up, not like you accidentally clicked a motivational TikTok? Yeah, that version of TED is ancient history. TED used to be the intellectual Olympics, Nobel laureates, cutting-edge scientists, artists that made you rethink reality. You left those talks buzzing, inspired, maybe even a little smug about how cultured you were. Now,
I'm only a Bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill.
it's basically therapy hour, but with wireless mics and standing ovations. Instead of ideas worth spreading, we get vibes worth tweeting. We've gone from talks that tackled global pandemics to someone spending 18 minutes explaining how a banana changed their life. And sure, once in a while you'll find a gem. But for every how to solve climate change, there are 5, let's reframe our sadness as sacred.
That crying helps us find our path to happiness.
TED used to make you feel smarter. Today, it makes you wonder if the speaker just got out of a yoga retreat and bought a ring light. So what went wrong with TED Talks? Let's rewind to the early 2000s. TED was elite, polished, intellectually mysterious, like a Mensa meeting but with better lighting and less awkward small talk.
Supposing anything. And does this tell us anything about what we can suppose?
Originally launched in 1984 by architect and designer Richard Saul Wurman in Monterey, California, TED was created to unite 3 worlds that rarely intersected: technology, entertainment, and design. Hence the name. Back then, it wasn't just a conference. It was a pilgrimage for the intellectually curious. Nobel laureates, startup legends, inventors unveiling mind-blowing ideas. No Instagram quotes, no personal branding, just pure, unfiltered thought. Attending TED was nearly mythical. Tickets were over $6,000. The guest list, tighter than Area 51. It was the Coachella of ideas. If Coachella gave you a moral crisis instead of a hangover. Then in 2006, TED did something radical. They put the talks online, for free. Suddenly, you didn't need to be rich or connected, you just needed Wi-Fi. The first 6 videos uploaded racked up over 1 million views in months, unheard of for educational content at the time. Talks by people like Sir Ken Robinson, Hans Rosling, and Brene Brown became viral sensations. Robinson's plea for more creativity in schools became the most viewed TED Talk ever.
Advice. Now, profoundly mistaken.
Over 75 million views and counting. Rosling used animated charts to turn global health data into a full-blown spectacle.
Families and they live here, or have they got longer lives and live up there?
These weren't just videos, they were intellectual events. You watched them in class, at work, on awkward dates to seem deep. Even Obama admitted to being a fan. They made us think, made us laugh, sometimes even cry. And crucially, they didn't feel like someone was trying to sell you a webinar at the end. TED was modern scripture for the secular smart crowd. Production-wise, it was prestige, clean visuals, crystal clear audio.
About the technology that I co-invented so that we can consider all of the ethical
Stage design that whispered minimalist genius, pacing that respected your brain cells. TED was the gold standard. But here's the catch. While the original TED conference stayed exclusive, TED Online created the illusion that this stage, this red dot, was for everyone. The ideas were public, the spotlight still very, very private, at least for a while. But like every great empire, TED grew and then began to rot. The iconic red circle, once reserved for revolutionary thinkers, slowly became open to, well, everyone. And sure, that sounds democratic and empowering, until your Uber driver starts quoting his TEDx talk about how sock puppets saved his marriage. At first it was innocent, a few extra speakers, a motivational coach or 2. Then came TEDx, the tiny X that changed everything. Launched in 2009 as a way to bring TED to local communities, TEDx was TED's rebellious younger sibling, enthusiastic but not always fact-checked, and it exploded. By 2014, there were over 10,000 TEDx events across more than 160 countries. Suddenly, the red dot was everywhere.
I had not yet fully grasped the way that the prosperity gospel had become the great civil religion.
High school gyms, yoga studios, co-working spaces with kombucha on tap. The format was the same. The quality, not so much. The X said, this isn't the main event. This is TED on a budget. TED without the editorial board. TED with more storytelling coaches than scientists. Anyone with a heartfelt story and a decent blazer could now stand on the red dot. Emotion started replacing expertise. Facts became optional. Credentials, a bonus. But if you had a quirky tragedy and a well-timed pause, you were in. And the topics, they got weird. Talks on how plants communicate trauma. Claims about healing crystals. There was even a TEDx talk promoting quantum jumping. And yes, the infamous vagina knitting talk.
My vagina has betrayed me.
And of course, in 2018, a TEDx event in Romania featured a talk titled "The Earth is Flat." No, it wasn't satire. Yes, it got taken down, but not before it racked up views and proved what many feared. TEDx had no filter. But the problem wasn't just fringe ideas, it was the formula. Talks began to sound the same. The setup, the pain, the breakthrough, the pause, the quote, the applause, rinse and repeat. Instead of spontaneity, we got performative vulnerability. And then came the moment we all collectively rolled our eyes. The speaker steps forward, lowers their voice, and says, "And that's when I realized I was the journey all along." TED Talks had become a parody of themselves. The brand was now a playground for influencers, pseudoscientists, and LinkedIn philosophers. Even the audience changed. Gone were the curious minds and skeptical thinkers. Now, it's a sea of startup founders and crypto bros hoping their applause ends up in someone's Instagram story. TED, once a badge of honor, became content. And in the age of the algorithm, content is cheap, disposable, forgettable. The original vision, ideas worth spreading, was noble. And for a while, it worked. TED made people smarter, made us care. But the more it grew, the more it fed the machine. And somewhere in that growth, it lost itself.
As a means of activating and stimulating your unconscious.
Because an idea isn't worth spreading if it's the same idea, told 1,000 ways, sprinkled with buzzwords, breathwork, and a banana metaphor. And just when we thought TED couldn't drift any further from its roots, came the moment that truly broke the illusion. The moment where even the applause felt automated, where the talks weren't just predictable, they became parody. That moment, it's next. And then it happened. The moment TED fully jumped the shark. We give you the TEDx talk titled, "What if you could smell your emotions?" Yes, that was real. Not a science experiment. Just a barefoot woman in a shawl, dancing through the olfactory vibration of grief. This was the TED stage now. No longer the arena of Nobel laureates, but a place where metaphors went to die.
I have a confession. I was an atheist.
And if you're thinking, surely this was a one-off, think again. This wasn't an isolated case of experimental expression. This was a pattern, one that signaled the TED brand had lost control over its gatekeeping. Even Chris Anderson, the head of TED, had to issue statements clarifying that no, TED does not endorse flat earthers, anti-vaxxers, or emotion sniffers. But the damage was done. The red dot had become a meme. In fact, the infamous TEDx talk titled "The Earth is Flat," which had already stirred concern, now felt less like an anomaly and more like a warning sign we all ignored. And just like that, the internet pounced. Reddit threads dissected talks like conspiracy theories. People began calling TEDx astrology for intellectuals. There was even a bingo card. Mentions trauma, uses an obscure Sanskrit word.
Half hour that we get to spend together, chatting.
Quotes roomy without context. What was once prestige is now motivational theater with better lighting. The TED brand didn't just lose credibility, it lost the plot. Completely. So how did the public respond? At first, with polite confusion, then with memes, and finally with brutal mockery. YouTube comment sections turned into stand-up routines. Twitter threads compiled the worst TEDx talk titles. TikToks began spoofing the format. Slow step forward, fake emotional beat, and always a teary revelation about being a broken vase or a rescued houseplant. The fake TED Talk challenge on TikTok exploded. Creators filmed themselves delivering nonsense speeches in perfect TED cadence.
If you witness a bro cheating, thou is incapable.
One user's talk titled, "How My Toaster Saved My Marriage," hit millions of views.
What is a birthday? I think it can best be understood by breaking down the word birth and day.
Even mainstream media caught on. Late night shows began parodying TED Talks. The cadence, the self-important hand gestures, the TED pause trademark. Even SNL jumped in.
Who need to wash their ass?
Parodying TED Talks as modern sermons delivered by people who cry on cue and define enlightenment through artisanal toast metaphors. And the visuals, always the same. Blue lit stage, dramatically isolated speaker, high-res close-up of someone dramatically whispering into a headset mic. It became so formulaic that you could generate one with AI, and people did. TEDx had officially entered the uncanny valley of sincerity. Meanwhile, the genuine, well-researched talks buried under algorithm sludge, replaced by motivational wallpaper and spiritual clickbait. TED had unintentionally created a monster, TEDx, and now it couldn't control it. There was no longer a quality filter, just a stage, a mic, and someone with a story.
That we can have conflicting feelings at the same time.
And let's be honest, not every story is worth spreading. This wasn't a collapse. It was a slow, smiling surrender to virality. And the consequences, real ideas, the kind that once shifted culture, now drown in a sea of personal branding. It's no longer about sharing insight. It's about building a thought leader funnel, leading to a podcast, a masterclass, a merch line. TED Talks used to make you think. Now they make you click, and the saturation has spilled over. Corporations host their own TED-style events. Startup bros deliver monologues on synergy while standing on miniature red rugs from Amazon. There's even a TEDx-style event for pets. No joke.
Think about your day. Remember that one time you found the perfect spot on the windowsill?
One cat delivered a talk on resilience via pre-recorded voiceover. Yes, it went viral. No, it didn't change lives. TED wasn't just copied, it was commodified, flattened, turned into aesthetic content. And when everything becomes TED, TED becomes nothing. Can TED be saved? Maybe. But it would require doing the one thing the modern content machine hates: slowing down, curation, rigor, substance. All the things that made TED great in the first place. Bring back the experts, ditch the cliches, kill the formula, let ideas breathe, raise the bar again. Because when everyone has a mic, not every voice deserves the stage, especially when what's being said adds more noise than meaning. Because TED's fall wasn't just about cringe, it was about dilution. It started with a single conference that made you feel smarter. It became 1,000 stages making you feel nothing. TED used to be a lighthouse, steady, guiding, clear. Now it's a disco ball, spinning, flashy, and reflecting everything but meaning. And even worse, it's become background ambiance for hustle culture. Less learning, more lifestyle. Lo-fi intellectualism to meal prep too. In the beginning, a TED Talk could challenge your worldview. Today, it's background noise while you scroll TikTok. Maybe that's not entirely TED's fault, maybe it's us. Our appetite for novelty, our obsession with relatability, our love for the dramatic pause.
Especially lately, it can be hard to find the good.
But here's the thing, ideas are still worth spreading. We just have to work harder to find the real ones. So next time you see someone step onto that red circle, take a breath and ask yourself, is this going to expand my mind or just my cringe tolerance? Because if the earth is flat and TED Talks are background noise, then maybe TED is just another echo chamber in disguise. Subscribe for more cultural autopsies, internet archaeology, and the occasional rant about things that used to be good. And remember, if you ever find yourself quoting your houseplant in a pitch deck, maybe take a walk instead. See you next episode.